Before we get started, this video will contain spoilers for Elden Ring Nightreign. Only a few days ago, we discussed the revealed code names for 7 of the 8 Nightlords of Elden Ring Nightreign, and well, with less than a week to go now until release, we've learned a whole lot more about them. From detailed lore descriptions to even getting a look at a couple of the new Nightlords themselves in action. All of this new information comes courtesy of a Nightreign promotional event hosted by Red Bull, in which 3 teams of 3 streamers battled previously unknown bosses, including a few of the as of yet unseen Nightlords. Now, for the most part, I didn't watch the streams, as I'd like for some surprises and elements of the game to be retained for me, but I did dive into some of the footage surrounding the Nightlords themselves, as I'm quite excited to learn more about them. So, in today's video, I want to take a look at just some of what was revealed during the event, including some of the incredible lore secrets that help to uncover who these powerful enemies really are. So let's get started. Remember as well that if you enjoyed today's video, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. It really does help the channel out, and your support goes a really long way into helping get this channel off the ground and helping to push us to reach our next major milestone of 15,000 subscribers. With your support, it's definitely possible, and I really do appreciate it. So, in our last video, we learned the code names for almost every single Nightlord in the game, and enjoyed some very tantalizing lore flavor text for the Nightlord Libra, otherwise known as the Equilibrious Beast. This time we have flavor text for every single one of the 7 already revealed Nightlords, compiled in a post on Reddit by user Neo Arsonist. So let's take a look and get to know these ultimate bosses a little better. Up first is of course Tricephalos, whose real name is Gladius Beast of Night, and its lore, which I believe was available in the network test alongside the boss itself, though I can't quite remember, so here it is again anyway, reads: a many-legged beast appearing from shadow, carrying on its back a chain-link sword used to hunt its prey. Between the fangs of its many heads flicker overwhelming flames. When assailed by multiple shadows, only sacred light can hinder the hunt. Of course, this is talking about stuff we mostly already know. We know that Gladius does carry a huge sword on its back, attached to the wolf itself via a chain, and that throughout the battle it will swing said sword around to try and strike the players. And Gladius itself is named after a type of sword. But perhaps the most fascinating thing about these descriptions is that each of them seems to reveal some kind of cryptic hint or weakness about the boss itself at the very end. For example, this flavor text highlights that sacred light seems to be the key to defeating Gladius. Then we move on to those more mysterious Nightlords, the ones that we were theorizing about in the previous video, with the first being Gaping Jaw, the gigantic dragon with the creepy horizontal sideways mouth, whose lore reads: a colossal crooked black frame, capable of harboring lightning with massive jaws, lined with grinding teeth to devour anything and everything it encounters. Only poison will stop it in its tracks. So this is another really cool description, and we've seen Gaping Jaw in a few of the trailers at this point already. Ultimately, I don't think there's too much to say about it. Of the revealed Nightlords, I would argue it seems to be the most simplistic and straightforward of the bunch, but it is a pretty horrifying creature nonetheless. And I speculated in the last video that it looked like it could be perhaps using gravity magic thanks to the way it charged a purple energy around itself when lunging for the player, but it seems to simply be lightning. Meanwhile, it is apparently weak to poison, and we do in fact see poison afflicting the Nightlord variant in the overview trailer. And I wondered previously if maybe it was emitting the poison itself, but no, it is definitely being struck by it. It's kind of interesting. I like the way the lore calls it a crooked black frame, implying that the creature itself almost doesn't really have any personality. It is just a monstrous, abhorrent being whose only real drive is to crush and devour with its enormous misshapen mouth. Up next we have the Sentient Pest, which I theorized was a moth based on the artwork, and that seems to be confirmed, at least tangentially, by this new flavor text, which reads as follows: a flying insect and living shears that trail the earth. those lucky enough to escape the former's rain of magic light fall victim to the shears. If moth poison is ingested, it will eat through the host, a parasite that cannot be removed alone. This is the most intriguing and potentially revealing of the bunch so far, in my opinion. So, it would seem there are indeed two enemies making up the sentient pest, a giant moth as expected, but then also living shears? Maybe I just have no idea what shears are in this context. I'm not entirely sure what that means or how literal it's going. I don't expect it to actually be talking about a living pair of shears moving about the place, but I do think that shears is a type of moth, which is interesting, but I think only one creature in this artwork really resembles a moth to me, but I guess the other one could be another insect of some kind. If you've got any better idea, do let me know down in the comments. Anyway, we've seen the Rain of Magic Lightfall before, and so that's apparently released by the moth itself. But it then says that those lucky enough to escape the former's magic fall victim to the shears. Could the shears it refers to be the swarm of smaller insects that we saw sapping the levels from the player in the IGN first video? The text then notes that if moth poison is ingested, it will eat through the host, a parasite that cannot be removed alone. To me, this is likely referring to its power to steal your levels. That sounds about right for something that eats through the host. And in the IGN video, they noted that you had to find and kill sentient pest to get your levels back. But I wonder if that's all this hint is referring to? Maybe you can be freed of it by a teammate somehow. And also, this text seems to imply that the moth poison, whatever form that takes, will constantly affect you over time until it is dealt with. So if this is the power that causes you to lose levels, do you slowly drop them over an extended period of time? That sounds incredibly nasty, if so, almost too nasty, and makes me wonder if it is in fact literal poison. Next is Augur, definitely one of the most interesting and perplexing of the Nightlords, whose entire appearance and being in the last video seemed to harken back to Bloodborne of all games, and I'll be honest, this lore does little to dissuade me of that fact. Reading an unknown entity that drifts through the skies, it makes an ocean of its surroundings that it may blend with whatever life is found, as if in a dream. Exercise caution, warriors. The enemy may not always be that which can be seen. Augur, which we'll discuss even further later on into the video, definitely seems to be some kind of formless being, while also bearing close resemblance to the Elden Beast. The fact the game itself classifies it as an unknown entity definitely makes me think that it isn't of Limveld originally, and possibly is alien in origin, as we originally anticipated. Interestingly, the similarities to Elden Beast don't end with the creature's appearance and floaty mannerisms. The text mentions it makes an ocean of its surroundings, and of course you battle the Elden Beast atop a huge body of water. But I wonder if this idea of making an ocean of its surroundings isn't supposed to be taken totally literally. If this creature is capable of melding and blending with all life form around it, in so that it exists in a liminal way, as noted, like a dream, then I wonder if the idea of the ocean here is metaphysical. That to the Augur, the entire place is a free-form ocean, that nothing is physical nor tangible, and it can move through, phase through everything to some degree, as though swimming through the very air itself. We'll discuss Augur a little more in a moment, but for now, this is a really cool description, and the vibes are very ethereal and weird, and I like it. Then of course there's the Equilibrious Beast, who we discussed last time. Following that, we have the Dark Drift Knight, who is of course the gigantic one-armed centaur, and its lore reads, an ancient centaur consumed with battle. His fervour for the gods he serves yet burns within, wielding a sacred form of the knight's power. According to legend, the mightily radiant gods were able to conceal themselves in the roar of thunder. Now, while this feels like more of an obtuse one initially, the idea that the Dark Drift Knight is wielding a form of the knight's power is interesting to me. Of course, the knight is the mysterious and sinister energy that is completely consuming Limvel, the very basis for this game. That's what the Nightfarers are pushing back against. So, the god the centaur worships is the night itself? If there is indeed a Night King, who potentially rules over all the Night Lords, could this be the god in question? As I mentioned earlier, these lore snippets give some hint towards a potential weakness or clue regarding the boss in the final line. So is this saying the knight will be weak to lightning? Perhaps the idea is that the true gods of the world are angry with him, those who existed maybe before the night arrived and started to consume everything, and so the roar of thunder is indicative of their anger. I'm grasping at straws with this one, to be totally honest. We need to learn more about what the night itself actually is. And then that brings us to the final Night Lord revealed so far, Fissure in the Fog, whose description reads, "A prehistoric dragon which lurks within fog. The great shadowy pair of eyes, framed in frigid mist, are said to appear at history's great junctures. Its coldness can readily purloin the loving warmth of its victims." How cool is that? And what an awesome final sentence. What a very fancy way of saying, this thing will freeze you to death. That might be my favourite description of the bunch, to be honest. Fissure in the Fog is made to sound extremely ancient, almost as though it predates everything. But not only that, it's a creature that's been present for many of the defining events that shaped the world's history, implying it's possibly had a hand in them too. Certainly its appearances are notable enough to have been chronicled, which is fascinating. But this is a good jumping off point for the next part of our discussion, a slightly deeper look at two of the Night Lords, whose boss fights to some degree anyway, were actually revealed during this livestream event. And so we're starting with Fissure in the Fog, whose true name has now been revealed. Fissure in the Fog was used as part of the promotion surrounding the event, with From Software themselves even officially revealing the Icy Dragon in marketing material. And I have to say, what an incredible design. Absolutely knocked out of the park. It is sleek, but beautiful. A winding four-winged dragon of the cold and mist. I'm glad it turned out to be a totally original enemy and not the King of the Storm, as we speculated initially, but Fissure in the Fog's true name is Caligo Miasma of Night, which is certainly intriguing. Miasma, in particular, is a very unusual and peculiar word to see used here, and actually it says a lot about Caligo immediately and the nature of this beast. A miasma is normally like a vapor or an atmosphere, almost like a thin, maybe even invisible veil, but one that hangs and lingers and spreads, and crucially it has almost entirely negative connotations. And so this makes me wonder a few things about Caligo. If it is the miasma of night itself, then it's almost like saying it is the night, in a sense. A miasma, as noted by the Oxford English Dictionary, is an oppressive or unpleasant atmosphere which surrounds or emanates from something. So it's like saying Caligo emanates from the night itself to blanket the world in an oppressive way, almost like this dragon could be the bringer, or at least the herald of the night perhaps, or something that the night itself sends forth, as though the night spreads from within him. Also, I wonder if Caligo is actually able to inhabit mist, in the sense that its body disappears and reappears, reconstituted from the mist to turn it physically into a vapor itself, hence why its eyes are what people in history saw first and foremost as it came into being, something that does seem to be confirmed in the boss fight. But also this lore detailing implies that whatever the night is, it's been meddling in the affairs of history for an incalculably long time. In a video shared by Reddit user NewPast4499, we can see a team of streamers, including Fextralife, Mika, and Elagias, taking on the dragon itself as the Night Lord of their run. Caligo genuinely has an impeccable design in my opinion, maybe one of the coolest dragons ever in a FromSoft game. The combination of the dragon's pure, glassy, crystalline white body and glacial, glittering ice attacks really does look wonderful. And as the fight reaches its second phase, the surrounding area is transformed with beautiful, shimmering columns of ice and typhoons of cold. It is excellent, and there's a fantastic soundtrack to boot. But, as if to confirm our earlier discussion, Caligo's most gimmicky attack allows it to essentially fuse with the mist it releases. And the dragon has one other particularly cool move, where it swings its tail and unleashes an arc of ice that is built upon the tail initially. But there is one more encounter I want to talk about before we go today. In a video shared by Reddit user NoHunt5775, a team of streamers are invaded out in the open field by Augur in a fantastic organic moment. Now, earlier we talked about Augur making an ocean of its surroundings, and while I still think it is more of a metaphor, we can see the sky around them seems to completely change, though personally it looks more akin to a starry churning cosmos than the ocean to me, as though, again, Augur has descended from a different plane or a different place entirely. But yeah, Augur, whose true name is still unknown, is very reminiscent of the Elden Beast, floating and swirling through the air, and definitely looks like some kind of ethereal deep-sea alien creature. While I imagine this overworld variant is heavily toned down in comparison to the Nightlord itself, Augur does seem to be slightly more of a passive, not exactly docile fight, but you know the ones I'm talking about. It reminds me a little of, say, the regal ancestor spirit, in that, at least in this video, it doesn't seem all that aggressive, and is instead just a giant spirit sailing through the sky and occasionally attacking. But I think that's it regarding new information on the Nightlords, at least for now. Obviously we'll know a lot more come Friday when the game is actually out. That's very, very exciting. There were a few more additional details that came out of this Red Bull livestream event. For example, a couple of other legacy bosses were confirmed to be returning, including the Smelter Demon from Dark Souls 2, which I didn't see coming, to be totally honest, and the Dancer of the Boreal Valley from Dark Souls 3, one of my absolute favourite bosses in that game, complete with its wonderful soundtrack as well. Now, when I made my video on the returning legacy bosses from the Dark Souls trilogy, I didn't include the Dancer on there because I thought it had been leaked already, and it does seem like that was the case. But I'm very excited to see that coming to the game. That should be an awesome fight to revisit. And Smelter Demon is interesting as well. I think I read somewhere, though I haven't actually watched the footage again, I'm trying to stay away from some of it. It's so difficult to do so. But I think I read somewhere that it changes from the normal Smelter Demon to the blue one in the midst of the fight, which is a pretty cool way of incorporating both of those battles. And frankly, I actually didn't mind either of the Smelter Demon fights in Dark Souls 2. The worst part about them is the run back for the blue Smelter Demon, so without it, it should be a perfectly decent fight, I think. And it was also recently revealed as well that Nightreign began development in 2021, so a year or so prior to the release of Elden Ring itself, so I think considerably further back than many of us thought. This has had quite a lot of time to cook, and I'm very, very excited to finally go hands-on with it again after the network test on Friday when the game finally releases. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you excited for Elden Ring Nightreign to finally release on May the 30th? I think as well launch times have now gone live as well. From Software has let us know when we'll finally be able to play the game. I think for me, it is going to be midnight, going from Thursday into Friday, so really not too long to go now. Very, very exciting indeed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Nightlords down in the comments. Now we know even more about many of the secret ones as well. Which one is your favourite? Which one are you most excited to find and fight in Limveld? And what do you think of both Caligo, Miasma of Night, and the Augur bosses as well? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Alright everyone, that's it from me today. Thank you again so very much for watching. Remember to hit subscribe if you haven't done already. It really does make a huge difference. And until next time, I'll catch you later, and let's talk games again.